Lots of wonderful things happening. We'll wait and see what's going on in the world around us in just a minute, as soon as we get through some, I have my glasses if you need them. We're going to talk a little bit about drag racing and a comeback story after about almost 2 years, I think 18 months or so, and the comeback of Tony Schumacher. For those of you who are watching us, you can see over my shoulder, that's a great profile, a Western kind of look of Tony Schumacher. And he is most definitely too hot to trot, as the Commodore's song has to say. But we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in sports right now. There's a number of different things happening out there, and we're going to get to those in just a second. But let me remind you of something that happens every Monday. We have a quote that we put up every Monday. The quote is, "I don't let my mouth say nothing my head can't stand." So said Jackie Robinson, number 42. And I think it's appropriate not only for this week's quote and what's going on in sports and entertainment, but also all around the world as it relates to just getting things done, staying true to what you say, integrity, honesty, truth, and a truth that's beneficial to everybody. So Jackie Robinson is one of my historical baseball heroes because of, for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest ones is that he made a statement, and when he made a statement, he stuck by it, even though he was threatened with, in many cases, bodily harm. So that's our quote for today. And as I say that, here's a piece of news I want to share with you. It comes from one of my dearest friends and colleagues, Curtis Granderson. He was quoted on the Today Show, and the following article, answering this question: why aren't black kids playing baseball? Now, you in today's time, you could perhaps have a lot of different remarks to that question that may seem to be adequate answers, but it boils down to community. And the community being aware of their kids and giving them activities, this may date me a little bit, to get them off the couch. Put their disposable thumbs around a bat or in a glove, throwing a ball. And that's not the reason why black kids are not playing baseball. The fact is they're not. Now, one can make a case across the board about all kids playing, as does this article. It talks about all kids as well as black children. But the concern that I have along with Curtis is that kids that have been typically looked upon and marginalized in some way, shape, or form need to get out in the community so that their image, their activity is seen and appreciated and represented by the adults that mentor them, like a Curtis Granderson, who has his Grandy Kids Foundation supporting kids all over the country and has been for years and years. Regretfully, camps like his that he has for kids every summer, throughout the summer, are going to be limited at best in being able to get out there and help kids get out and play baseball or just be active. So, moving on though to more sports items, what we've got happening, this is just amazing to me. The Ivy League schools, all of them, their conference has decided to scrap football for 2020. It's amazing. And I say it that way because I love football. I love watching football, no matter what conference it is. So if one conference makes this decision, other administrators are going to look at that and wonder, scratch their head, ask questions of their colleagues. Should we be doing that? Or why are you doing it? And what is it about the fall or the circumstances, the situations we find ourselves in with this health emergency that have caused you to take this drastic of a measure? Now, understand that Ivy League schools are primarily Northeast, with an exception being, well, there's not really many exceptions. They're all pretty much Northeast. The condition of the pandemic hit that area of the country early and often, and has, with good discipline and following CDC guidelines, they have modified their circumstances. So I'm kind of wondering, what about it scientifically? As an epidemiologist today from UCLA stated, follow the science. Look at the science to see how it's going to influence you, the pandemic, and then use the signs as a guide marker for your behavior. I'm not so sure the Ivy League athletic directors did that. And maybe they're getting some pressure from their constituency amongst all of them through the corporate sponsorship, and they're, and look at, they're student athletes, so promoting the student first and then the athlete is definitely where I live as an educator. But that's a very interesting thing. So keep looking at that and how it's going to influence other programs around the country. Now, as we move along, let's go to the pro side of things. NFL football. Can you dig this? This is amazing. They're allowing players to opt out of the 2020 season. And the economics of that decision is in favor of the player. They're still under contract. They sacrifice little or nothing. Now, I'm wondering if it's going to get to the extreme of a player going, ooh, my finger hurts. I think I have COVID. I hope not. I believe more strongly in the competitive spirit of the NFL player than I hope that this implies to the negative. I believe that we're going to have a great NFL season under whatever configuration it is, but the NFL has made a statement. They're going to let players opt out of the 2020 season. I find that extraordinary, very extraordinary. And so extraordinary that we've got one individual, a professional athlete, who we're going to talk about today, Tony Schumacher, who can't wait to get back into it. And he's ready to deal with whatever the track, the course, the NHRA presents to him. I'm kind of interested to know what was the NFL's motivation to even consider offering that. Was it NFLPA driven? Was that the first question that was asked? Was from the NFLPA, or was it a groundswell of attitude and interest from the franchise side of things, the ownership side of things? Well, some great questions. We'll dig into that a little bit more because it does influence performance. If one of my clients, thankfully none as of yet, opted out of the NFL season, I'd question whether they should be a client. Because I'm into performance, delivering performance, handling those obstacles that get in your way to perform. It seems to me the NFL is offering an out that reduces the potential for performance and performance excellence. I'm just curious, just thinking about it, The last piece of news I'm going to share with you today is, it's been kind of a yo-yo, up and down, back and forth with Tiger Woods. But he's come out and very specifically said, I think he's got a handle on his physical and mental state and what he needs to do and what environments serve him best in the time frame he needs to recover and renew. So he's being more succinct in his thoughts about when am I going to play and where am I going to play. And he's going to return next week to the Memorial Tournament, very lucrative tournament. He's done well at that tournament. And he's also stated in this announcement that the time between tournaments is going to be somewhat calculated. He knows already from history that how much it takes for him to recover and keep himself in playing shape so he can compete at the level that he's used to. Because one of the things that I can relate to, that I'm sure it's going through Tiger's head, as you age, your brain doesn't necessarily agree with your body as far as capability. Your brain will put you in a position to think, I'm capable of doing that, and your body won't deliver. And that's a tough transition to get through as a professional athlete. Well, actually, as a professional anything, athlete, executive, what have you. Getting older is a challenge. It's a challenge I've wrapped my head around, and I'm working on it every day to be the best I can. But it's truly a case of what your brain thinks, your body might not be able to deliver. So Tiger's coming back. Memorial Tournament is coming up. And if you're a Tiger fan, take a look at what Tiger's doing and join him in his activity. Well, today we're gonna talk about, we're getting ready for the primary part of our show today, and that's about Tony Schumacher and what Tony Schumacher has gone through in the last 18 months to 2 years regarding his comeback story. And there are some economic reasons. I don't think 2 years ago, let's say, when Tony was finishing his last season, he wanted to not be in the seat of a dragster, a top fuel dragster, but it wasn't necessarily totally in his hands. Army had been his sponsor for 19 years. He became such an emblem for that sponsorship and that entity, that image and brand, that he was called the Sarge. If you look him up on Instagram, that's how you look him up, Sarge. And he would actually do promotional items both for his team and Army by driving a tank, jumping out of an airplane and parachuting. He did a number of things. And that's part of who Tony is. So those 19 years, almost 20 years actually, as far as the total relationship goes, were ideal. But the Army decided to change direction and do something else. Well, what do? You try to find another sponsor. Well, in light of that, finding another sponsor, there's some other things that come up. So before I get into too many details about Tony, let's talk about what's come up that could be an obstacle for Tony's performance. I was hoping that that Tony and the Don Schumacher Racing crews will be here July 17th for the Mile High Nationals. And well, I can't say it yet, but there are some obstacles that have been thrown in the way. John Vandermeer, which is Vandermeer Raceway, out in Morrison, Colorado, has faced some legal battles. They had an event that didn't quite comply with the public health guidelines, and so the county out there that encompasses the track at Morrison said, we're going to shut you down. You didn't comply. Well, let me put it this way. They didn't really shut them down. They didn't say they were going to shut them down. They said, we're going to limit how many can come into your facility so that you are in compliance. They gave them a limit of 175 people. That may not even include the media, the teams, and their crews. Makes it very hard to put on a national event, the start of the Western Swing. So for those of you who can see my image over my shoulder, that's at the starting line in 2019 at the Vandermeer Raceway for the Mile High Nationals. I was there, as I am every year, to cover the track and talk to the folks that I know in each of the teams. Last year I talked to a Schumacher driver of a funny car, Tommy Johnson Jr. And I also talked to Cruz Pedregon. So the black and red car you see in this picture, that's Cruz Pedregon's funny car. Well, also notice all of the wonderful people in the stands, shoulder to shoulder, because that's what you do. It's the nitrous, it's the noise, it's the pounding of your chest when 6,000 horsepower launches off the line and shoots down the 1,000-foot mark to track A to B as fast as they can. Now, I said 1,000 feet because it's not quite a quarter mile. When it started, it was a quarter mile. It's not that anymore. That's what it looks like at Vandermeer Speedway when it's rocking. What's going to happen when it's not rocking? Well, this weekend is an event prior to Tony Schumacher and the Don Schumacher Racing team were to come to Colorado. Let's wait and see what's going to happen with that. Well, there's Vandermeer Raceway. The Vandermeer Raceway is a grand place to be. Wonderful accommodations, suites above the track starting line, wonderful stands on each side of the track for the quarter mile, and you've got, as you can see, a lot of economics going through that track on race day for a national event like the Mile High Nationals. You see a Pepsi logo on the back of one of the time monitors, the big screen jumbotrons. You see Mopar, the Dodge brand, on one of the other monitors. The place is resplendent with labeling and images of sponsorships and money that goes into the track, the drivers, and the teams. Where is that going to go? 175 people limit. Well, the Vandermeers and their legal representation have decided to fight against that ruling, which just happened this week, and say, look, that's not fair. Now, certainly fans of drag racing would say it's not fair. They intend to go out there. But I pose this to you. You know, for those of us who have competed in any sport, there are rules, there are guidelines, there are things that in those rules and guidelines that allow us to be safe. The rules and guidelines would set up to help protect us from that. Just like the car that goes down the track at Bandimere has certain specs, certain criteria that each car has to maintain. The design of the car, the color of the car, any number of things that defines the safety and structure of that car. So there's some equivalency in the competitive nature of it, but also there's some safety. They've done that year after year after year. Why aren't we applying those same standards to race day as it relates to the pandemic and COVID-19? Why is it an arbitrary, I'm going to say arbitrary, it may not be arbitrary, 175 participants, I'm not even going to say fans, because I don't know how they limit it, because there's crews and teams and staff and media that would go to the Bandimere Raceway. It's not enough. Just ask Adam Boransky. Good morning, Adam. Good to have you with me. Those people who know what drag racing is about would be willing to follow the rules, would be willing to follow guidelines that keeps the safety there, adheres to the CDC recommendations. The state of Colorado is in phase 2. It's an open air arena. We should be able to create a criteria that accommodates the public health concerns for the county that the Bandimere racetrack sits in, as well as being able to have a fan experience that helps the fans enjoy drag racing in Thunder Alley. And remember too that the Bandimere Raceway is a family affair. It's multi-generational history here. It has overcome any number of, well, not really obstacles, but just challenges. Sound ordinances, being close to major highways, traffic patterns, any number of things that have come up that people who aren't necessarily fans of drag racing get brought up. Now, I have a long history of being around and involved with drag racing that starts way back with my son many years ago. He's no longer in drag racing, but still admires it and respects the skill and talent that goes into producing a great event like the Mile High Nationals. Now remember, this is the first step of the Western Swing, so it's not just one race that this could influence. This one race and the decisions that are being made at Bandimere with the Public Health Department could actually create an echo that goes out into the other, to Sonoma, which is the next step for the Western Swing in California. And then it goes up the coast to Seattle before it comes back east to Bradenton in Minnesota. Every location, I'm sure, the NHRA is evaluating based on the state and their behavior in dealing with the pandemic. As you can see, this last week when there was an event, the picture behind me is about fans sitting in the stands at Bandimere, and it looks like they're trying to practice some social distancing. Now, if you see a line of folks sitting together, I'm going to guess that's a family affair. Now, there are ways, if you follow the science, to handle that. That, what would be called the herd immunity kind of theory, families would create that. So I guess you'd have to check to see if they're all relatives. But get a thermometer out at the gate, check them in. It's a secured facility. Once you're in, you're in. You know, the hand stamping thing. So do the thermometer thing and get them checked out for everybody. Just like what we're doing down in Florida. At Bradenton, Florida, we're doing at the IMG headquarters. The WNBA is down there starting their revised season. The NBA is just up the road in Orlando, Kissimmee, the Disney complex. It's possible, but I don't think. I think there was a rush to judgment. I get it. I get the rules. All right, I get the parameters, but let's make sure that we're looking at this with good, open minds and letting the science be our guide. In public health, I'm encouraging you to do that. for the sake of the Mile High Nationals and all that economic power that is brought to the fans and the community. All right, so that being said, that kind of gives you a setup for today's person of interest for today. That's Tony Schumacher. He is newly sponsored by Global Electronic Technology, and his teammate Antron Brown, who is also driving a Top Fuel dragster. The two of them will be doing a kind of a double header down in Indianapolis to get back in the seat for Tony. Antron, he finished a great season last year, back into it now. And what really interested me when I started talking to Tony, and you'll see some of his responses here in a minute, but let me give you some of the answers he had to questions I asked him. The first question I asked him, I said, you've been hanging out with your family, pandemic or not. You didn't have a sponsorship, so you're hanging out with your family, and because of the pandemic, you're hanging out with them a little closer than normal. Because without a pandemic, you'd be at the shop. You'd be at the track testing stuff and getting ready for hopefully a sponsor to click on with you. So I asked him, what was about your family that they were the most encouraged of not having at home anymore about your character? He says, I constantly move. He's constantly moving around. So he goes and works out. He does those kind of things, but just sitting is not quite the optimal thing for Tony. I'm going to guess, not guess, I know this for a fact. He's not a gamer. The Xbox, he's not an Xboxer. He may play it, he may know where it's at, he may have kids that do that, but that would probably drive him crazy because he's sitting in one place for too long. So he said they wanted to get him out of the house because he's like a gnat, going all over the place. And then I followed up with, okay, you got the seat, you got the team, but what about that team? What about that team is special to you? Because typically, once you get a new gig, even with Don Schumacher Racing, all the cars they have, the funny cars, the Top Fuel cars, each of them has their own crew. Well, in this case, it makes a lot of sense to Tony's point when he answered me, is that Antron Brown's crew is his crew. The setups will be relatively the same, with only minor exceptions due to the driver tendencies, driver idiosyncrasies. For those of you who have watched drag racing, if there's tire slippage or a cylinder goes out, what does that cause a driver to do? Well, it's accelerator and brake. I got two choices, stop and go. And how you play those will either complement or trash a setup on the car. And people like Tony Schumacher, who's an 8-time NHRA champion and has won a Wally at Indianapolis, which is where they're going to the Lucas Oil Raceway. He's won a Wally there 10 times. So he knows that track, and the crew knows him. Not all of them have ever really worked on his car before, but they know the setups will be tweaked a little bit differently. They'll turn the screws a little bit differently. What's really exciting for me when Tony answered my question that way, he said, hey, they're great people. I love them because they know me through Antron. But they also have the historical record. They have graphic representation of every one of the 8 cylinders on a computer screen of races that Tony has done in the past at Indy. So they'll know, and the crew chief will make the final decision, they'll know what they have to do to turn the screws to get it at a place that best fits Tony Schumacher and his global electronic electronic technology car. There we go. I want to flip-flop electronic and technology for some reason. I don't know why I did that. I'm not dyslexic. Maybe I should be. Then maybe I'll get it right. But he emphasized 2 words. Tony emphasized 2 words about the crew. Consistency. Because of the Antron Brown connection and sharing of crew, but then the big piece is quality. When you put those 2 words together and the effort that represents in an NHRA Top Fuel drag racing crew with somebody like Tony Schumacher, you've got better than a fair chance of winning a Wally, and for sure qualifying and getting to race day. That is an essential piece to any comeback, no matter how long you've been away. I was pretty confident when I asked Tony about if there was anything about his preparation that he changed. Now that we got the confidence in his eyes, his demeanor, and you'll see it when I show you the video of him, how confidently he sat there answering my questions. He's unshaken. He's in fact, if anything, he may be too excited, too amped up to get back in the seat and throw the throttle and pull the chutes at the end, because he said he did nothing to change his prep. It's the same. It's a winning formula. He's done it so many times. Why would I change anything? And then the other shoe dropped. And then he started talking about the test and the testing and the first run. I said, what do you want out of the first run? And he hesitated for a minute. He goes, I want to get down the track. I want to see the numbers. No matter what the run's like, I want to see the numbers, because that sets us up for the entire rest of the weekend on how we're going to manage the track. Because we know the track, we know the environment, the crew knows me, I know the crew, even though they haven't worked with me as a whole crew together. Some participants in the crew had been on his team before in the past, but he knows them. But that missing element is the reality of the moment, being in the now, giving himself information that he can work on from that moment going forward. We talk about this all the time, about some of the significant components of high performance delivery, the outcomes you expect. And some of it, you don't get that feedback until right in the moment. Managing the now and staying in that moment, and then controlling what you can control. And it might sound simple, but in a drag racing, whether it's funny car or top fuel, it's stop and go. Now, I'm oversimplifying it. It's far more difficult than that because of how quick you have to respond and deal with and feel what's going on. Like, feel the tire shake before it really gets you and make that move. But in simple terms, it's stop and go. Brake and throttle, or throttle and brake. As I say that, I look at the clock and I'm making sure that I stay on task with my timing. I'm so grateful for what we do here at KUHS, streaming every day and delivering the kinds of messages and music that you expect from us, because I wouldn't be here if we weren't high performance. That's what I'm all about, delivering strategies and systems that help you to be your best. Check me out on my website at 360mindset, 360mindset.com. We are very concerned now with our health issues and the pandemic that's out there, about the growing caseloads. Fortunately for us, we've got some great people here in Colorado that help us stay focused on what's important. And one of those things is products that keep us safe and healthy and clean. And one of those for me is, as I've told you before, is the Waltz products. I'm putting on my hands the alcohol-free, Waltz-free lotion that you can get at store, store.avcare, avkare.com. That's store.avcare.com. Check it out and use this code so you can get a discount, because this stuff is got a green footprint for those of you who want to make sure that our environment is safe, but also the lotion is just amazing, and it kills all the stuff out there in addition to the COVID-19. It's good stuff. So use 360PERF, 360PERF, PERF, when you go to store.avcare.com and pick up some Waltz Free or the hard surface disinfectant Waltz D. All right. Let's see what Tony has to say about a question I asked him regarding social media. Because look, we're going to be changing. If Indianapolis has anything close to what Bandimere is facing, with a reduction in the fan base being there, there's going to be some changes in how you promote and showcase your efforts. So I asked Tony about the relevancy and importance of social media. Here's what he had to say.
Social media real hard. DSR, man, we're really good at it. We have a lot of people. I'm the worst. I'm like me and like Beckman. We're the weak links. We just, we're a little bit older, and I don't have a media person now. If I get back and start doing it, they have my media guy again. They'll be running around. And, I'm fortunate to have Summer. She's real good at it. She'll film and she'll post stuff, and that makes for the fans, they get to see a piece that they probably wouldn't if it was just me. But it is becoming more important, and I see strengths and I see some weaknesses with social media. I think a lot of value is put on it, and I don't know if it sells. At the end of the day, the Toyota a commercial would sell, or we used to say you win on Sunday, right? You sell on Monday. That was just the way. And now it's about posts. How many posts do you get? How many likes do you get? Well, that kid liking your post really can go out and buy a car as much as them seeing you win. I just don't see it. But I'm also a different generation. The kids now, they'll buy anything you put on a post. You show a good like on something, they're like, I got to buy that. I see my kids do it. And so we're just trying to find that value. But yeah, we're going to have to hit it. We're going to have to hit it right, hit it hard, and do that social media the best we can. Now, we're going to have to hit the social media real hard. DSR, man, we're really good at it. We have a lot.
That's my bad.
You put on
technology.
Post, you show a good like on something, they're like, I got to buy that. I see my kids do it, and a couple of months while they're sitting around an office, not on the road, and put some ideas.
Now, I'll stop it right there and let you know that Tony's now talking about the NHRA and their responsibility. Now, it's going to be on Fox. The weekend race this weekend in Indianapolis is going to be on Fox. And I'll give you some details about the times on that. Excuse me. Fox is going to air the eliminations on Sunday from 12:30 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the 11th, and then on the 12th, the finals will be at 9 a.m. Eastern. Boy, that's really something. 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to guess they're going to restream those to see, after they see what kind of interest there is. So check that out and see what's going on. Now, let me also point out that in addition to Tony making a comment about social media and the relevancy of it, he's also pointing out the importance of the sponsorship. And the sponsorship comes from a family business, not unlike a lot of the family business we've talked about. Schumacher Racing is a family business. Don Schumacher, the patriarch of that. Tony, his son. He's got a daughter that maybe still is, working for the company. But there's also the key sponsor for Tony and Antron. And in this 2020 Mellow Yellow season, it takes a special commitment, in addition to the money, a special commitment to continue to support these great athletes like Antron Brown and Tony Schumacher. And Steve and Samantha Bryson of Global Electronic Technology, they're really committed. Now, they committed to Antron last year, and now we're into it with 2 cars, which I think is just another great commitment and representation of a commitment by a corporate sponsor during these times. This is tough times. And one of the things I was very interested in is the synergy between Antron, Tony, and Steve Bryson. And here's the quote that represents that synergy. Global electronic technology is synonymous with a winning culture, said founder CEO Steve Bryson. And that is also the same thing about Schumacher Racing. Don Schumacher and Schumacher Racing, I know from personal experience, represents that in a very high quality, genuine way. But that being said, Tony's going through a transition. So when I turn the video back on, remember that at one point for almost 20 years, Tony was known as the Army guy. And in many occasions, he's still being referred to that. But Tony wants to make sure people know that it was an absolute privilege to represent them, that being the Army, for so many years. But he's not that guy anymore. And it'll be exciting for him to face a different brand with the Global Electronic Technology. And he said that he's offering a very huge thank you, as I pointed out, to Steve and Samantha Bryson for allowing him to this incredible opportunity to get back out there and perform. So let's give a little bit more to Tony and what he has to say about his comeback.
But we just, until we get out there, right now it's up in the air. I've watched some NASCAR things. I've seen some done right. I've seen some done wrong. And, you know, we've all watched it. We all have our own opinions on all of it. So, you know, you know, this is a learning curve for all of us. Every day it's changing. And, you know, but Toyota is very, very, very big. And I know that all of the sponsors are at their social media, though. Like, you know, me being new at Toyota this year, I've spoken a lot with Antron, and I've had some social media calls with the Toyota folks, and just explaining this is what we're about, this is what we like. They're very clear on their path, and I think that's really awesome. You know, I think for me, those sound bites were never written and never scripted. It was the Army car. I got out and I talked about soldiers, their families, their way of life, where we.
You know, that's an interesting comment by Tony, as it goes back to my remark earlier about he's not the Army guy anymore. But he's also very genuine, because I asked him about what does this season look like to you, and what do you want to accomplish? He mentioned brand recognition with manufacturers, with the keynote sponsor, manufacturers like Toyota, manufacturers like Mac Tools and others that are stickered on his car. He represents that in a big way. But the other piece is the realities of the communities around him. And I want to stretch that reality and what Tony's made a point about in saying to others about other sports. We've got to make sure that we're using the science of the event. In this case, with drag racing, there's a lot of science that goes into drag racing. Engineering science, chemistry, with the nitrous and the lubricants that oil the machine, and the clutches and all the different things that represent power and leverage and force. If they're not all synchronized together in a very scientific, calculated way, the car has a hard time going E to B at a power and speed that's representative of a winning effort. Well, Tony's all about that. And he's made sure that in coming back, that he's connecting all the dots. Here's some more about what he has to say about connecting those dots.
For what we were doing, it was stuff that I had done for so long, and was so educated. It's the reason I went to every Army base and jumped on planes and drove tanks, so I understood it. You know, the sound bites now, it's going to be a little bit different for me, and it's going to be you know, I don't want to end up, and I love John Force, but I don't want it to always be routine. I love phenomenal driver, greatest man we had in the sport in a long, long time. I just don't want it to seem too patterned. You know, I want to talk about what we do. What does global electronic technology do? What does Toyota do? What are they about? How do they reach people? And there's a lot of stuff there. I think because of the lack of fans this weekend that they're going to be allowed to have, we're going to have more access to more time, so the fans can get to know us a little better, rather than just a name on our shirt. What do we stand for? What are we about? What do we do on our off time? You know, those are good things. Those race cars don't have fair. They're parts and pieces. They're hunks of metal. They're carbon fiber. They're titanium. It's the driver. How does a driver get through the situations they get through? That are the lessons for the youth, you know, that are growing up. And how do we make them better? How do we make them stronger and better employees, and better fathers, and better.
I don't know that I have to echo that too much. He makes a really, really good point. And again, a reference to the value of that sporting event. There are so many different people from so many different walks of life that attend a National Hot Rod Racing Association event. The NHRA is an open door to anybody who wants to pay the $60 for the ticket on race day to come in and watch these wonderful vehicles, and the drivers, as Tony is saying, make an influence, not only on the track, but influencing young people. My son was one of those. He was influenced greatly at a young age and got hooked on hot rods and being a mechanic, and then eventually expanded that and is now in aerospace and aerospace technology. That's the kind of influence this has. So if we don't take a look at these events and manage them using foundational information that science provides us, it's going to be difficult to have that influence on those fans in the stands, however many there are. So yeah, there's going to be a connection to social media to translate and transition the images and the greatness of the event, but there's nothing like being in the stands or standing on the starting line and feeling those little micro flecks of tire rubber pinpoint your head. There's many times I had the black streaks across my forehead over the years, but that impression that you get, and Tony Schumacher is a big part of that. All right, let's continue with what Tony has to say about his influence on the fans.
Family members and that kind of stuff. Wow, that's a good question. I'm just happy to end in 3 weeks, knowing I got 2 trophies in Indy would be pleasing for me. If I was allowed to...
So, a little faux pas there. The question I asked Tony, you saw my great image there. The question I asked Tony is, what does he want? What is his takeaway from this season? If he were to go forward with there was nothing else in front of him, he just got into the season in the modified way it's going to be presented, and goes forward. What does he want out of this season in 2020? And here's what he continues to say about that.
Out the race and train again. I just want and have always wanted at Pomona a couple of really good cars, so that when they're fighting for a championship, not one in a blow-off season. One, I want to have it where it comes down to 2 guys, 2 girls, 2 people butting heads, and at the end of the day, the ticket holder says, "I owe more money." Because I've had that happen. You've seen the run. I've had people come up and go, I paid $60 for a Sunday ticket, and I owe another $60. That was the best entertainment I've had. That would make me feel good. I've been missing that for a year, and I've heard that. I've been part of those moments so often, and I've had so many lovers and haters. I've had people come up and go, "Man, I can't stand you. I'm a Coletta fan." And I go, "I don't care, but that was a great race. Thank you. It was fair. It was honest. It was a battle. You won or you lost. I mean, heck, Antron beat me. I've had that both sides. I want to walk away going, I gave it everything I had. My team gave it everything I had. We left nothing on the table, and the fans earned a big smile because they just enjoyed a great show." Yeah, I think Instagram and a Facebook.
Well, I know from my experience that the presence of the physical presence of being at the track is the ultimate. It's the value, that $60. When they give you a good show and there's a good race, the head-to-head battle amongst competitors in the finals across all the classes, you want to give them more. You're not, because you paid for your 60, but you feel like you should have because you got such great value. It was such a great competitive environment that entertained you and kept you engaged. Whether you're an educator or an athlete, those are key things. Being engaged and delivering beyond what your expectations were, beyond what you put down on paper in your plan, you got more. You have an expectation when you buy a ticket to any event, and we've got more than enough factors that are changing the ultimate outcome of what that event's going to be like. But Tony Schumacher is coming back, and he's excited about coming back. I'm really pleased and honored to have had the chance to interview him on his comeback. I'm hoping that he's able to join us in Denver for the Mile High Nationals. We'll wait and see, right? We'll see what the courts and the public health system mandates for Vandermeer Raceway. Here are Tony's final remarks about what he wants out of the season.
Guy, I know I have a Twitter account somewhere, and the Army used to do a real good job of that stuff. But I like going on Facebook, and it's probably because of my age. But I can read the comments. Everything seems to go up easier. I don't have to constantly take photos. For me, let me tell you where I'm going. I'm going to be in a race, and I don't want everyone to know where I'm going to be all the time for my safety and my family's safety. But I don't think it's necessary. Do people care what kind of chicken I'm buying? Do they care what kind of steaks I'm eating? I mean, to me, that's too much. I get that it's going in that direction. Pretty soon we won't have to walk outside the door. We'll just do it all here and people can watch. But for now, the Facebooks and the Instagrams are the right things for me. So get on there, check them out. You know, I'm super easy to find. I wish I could even tell you my Instagram. It's like the Sarge. I don't know, just look it up. It's easy. That evil, that's an attitude, you know, same thing. I want you to get in your car with some fear, and you will.
So Tony ended up there by saying, if he's wearing a mask, what's on the face of his mask? He just wants to be, he's an intimidator. If you've ever watched Tony in a race, he'll come up to the line and he'll make moves right from the burnout coming back to the starting line on the setup. You know he's over there. He's doing things with his car that indicates to you that he's ready to compete. And if you see him in the staging lanes getting ready in the setup car, and you're moving down with each car before you get on the starting line, you'll be able to interact with Tony, but you know he's got a game face on. So he gave us a little bit of a piece there about how you're going to be, what you're going to expect of him, regardless of what's around him. And in this case, the health concern that we have, he's going to give you a show. He's going to entertain you, and it's going to compete.
We're going to have to hit social media.
So as you know, we stream here at KUHS Denver. It's a great place. We're streaming on, and we do it with Fridays, 11 o'clock for me, on 360 Performance. I'm your host, Coach Whiteman, and I am so glad. I tried some new things today because we had to tape early in the week before he was going to head for the track to get ready for this week's race this weekend. He's got a doubleheader, 2 different tracks down in Indianapolis, getting ready with the hope that, you know, more tracks are ready to go. And the public health system, what we're doing in each state to stay healthy, you know, wearing masks, distancing as needed. The more we can do that, the less positive tests are going to come back. But we need to do the testing so we know where they're at, so that as we get closer and closer to a vaccine, we know what people need the vaccine quickly because the testing was done. So I'm going to stop on that and continue with my report on Tony Schumacher and his preparation for this week's race. It's going to be down in Indianapolis this weekend. Let me give you the exact times again, repeat that for you. It's the Global Electronic Technology car with both Antron Brown and Tony Schumacher riding and driving their Top Fuel dragsters. On Friday, today, they begin qualifying for the eliminations on Saturday and Sunday. They will be showing the eliminations, the first set of eliminations, tomorrow, the 11th, from 12:30 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fox Sports, and then the elimination finals will be on Sunday, the 12th, starting at 9 a.m. Now, I'm going to guess that's going to be not the typical long schedule, starting at 9 o'clock in the morning, and that's Eastern Time. So I'm not sure. It's going to probably, I would imagine, it's going to go around 1, 2, no, not 1 or 2 o'clock. It would go around 10, 11 o'clock our time here in the Mountain States. So one of the interesting parts for me in talking to Tony was about, I mean, he's been around racing a long time, 20 plus years, has a family, has a great family that is just as excited to be at the track as they are for getting him out of the house. And because when we were talking about, you know, what were the things about his character that motivated his family to want to get him out of the house, he was quick to say that even though he's leaving and getting back in the seat of the dragster, his family will be there too. His partner will be there, Summer will be there, as he said, doing the social media thing for him, shoring up those areas of weakness that he has outside of Instagram and Facebook. As you noticed, he's not a big Twitter fan, and he's one of the things about Tony that really intrigues me is that his discipline and focus to his sport, and in particular the people that are in his sport with him. You heard him mention Summer, his partner. You heard him mention Antron Brown, reference to the DSR family and the crew that supports both him and Antron Brown. Those young men and women are dedicated sports people that are. I mean, look at they're risking their own health, but I know from talking to the DSR people, and at this point I want to thank Allison McCormick for her help, the director of marketing for Don Schumacher Racing, that she shared with me that they're following all the guidelines, and perhaps even more, that the CDC puts out there for them to be safe, and making sure that they're doing what is necessary. And as I'm looking at this, I want to make sure you also listen for a name and look for the frame of Brian Corradi. Brian is the crew chief for both Antron and Tony, and he himself has got a track record of excellence that is quickly nipping at the heels of a Tony Schumacher in the driver's seat, because as any competent and skillful driver will say, it takes a good person turning the screws and looking at the computer to get me from A to B in a time that we all expect will bring us to the finals on race day on Sundays. So listen for that name. That's Brian Corradi. Brian spells his last name Corradi. Karate. Well, as we get close to the end of the show today, I want to make sure we talk a little bit about what's happening next week. Look, I've had more than my share of calls, as I've said in the past, with my athletes as well as administrators and leaders in the sports world. And lately, the NCAA has, they've let a little piece of information out. So next week's show, we're going to talk to college administrators, athletic directors, about what's their plan. We're getting closer and closer. Now, I know, and I've shared this with you before, at Colorado State and the colleges here in Colorado, football team players and their coaching staffs are back on campus. NCAA knows about it. They're following the guidelines as far as the CDC regarding protecting themselves. The players and staff are probably getting just overwhelmed with being thermometer raised in front of their forehead every day, multiple times a day, making sure that everything's safe, wearing a mask, washing your hands, doing the things you need to do. But that being said, I mentioned at the top of the show, Ivy League canceled. 2020 football season and fall sports canceled. That's a message. Why'd you do it? Questions are being asked. Other conferences are also making changes. The Big Ten this week made a change and said, we are only going to do our conference schedule. What does Michigan say when they're looking at non-conference game with Washington? The Huskies, big time game, big time challenge, preps the program. All of those strategies that have typically been used by head coaches in the Big Ten and other conferences aren't going to be viable. They're not going to get prepped with a strong competitive team like the Washington Huskies in preparation for their conference season. That's what the Big Ten has said. What does the ACC said? What does the SEC said? They're sitting and waiting. They haven't opined on it yet. They haven't made a decision about what they're going to do. Are they going to do only conference? Some of the athletic directors have said very clearly that presents a problem for us because those non-conference games help us prepare at a high competitive level for our conference season. Eventually, it rolls down to money and making money. The more non-conference games you have with a high rating factor builds your program, builds your recruiting capabilities. A lot of things are at stake. So next week's show is going to be very interesting. Right now we intend to have Joe Parker showing up from Colorado State University. We've got our our inquiries out to the University of Iowa, the head coach and athletic director there, and we're going to look back and perhaps get my friend and Colorado Broncos fan, Paul Kirk, who's down out at Utah. We're going to be talking to Paul and some of the staff there about what's going on with that. We're also going to talk to administrators and managers with the Mountain West Conference and seeing if we can, the IMG leader group that does marketing for a number of colleges all over the country. We're going to hopefully talk to one of their representatives in preparation for that show as well, because they have a lot at stake as well. They help the marketing and broadcasting setups for every show. So if the game schedule shrunk, so is their revenue potential and the economics of their contracts. A lot of people are going to be affected by the decisions that are made by conferences and the athletic directors in those conferences. So, got a few minutes left in the show today. I'm going to give you one more piece of information about what to plan for going forward in the future. Excuse me. On July 24th, in 2 weeks, we're going to have another, well, not a resident anymore, but he is a fair weather friend to Colorado and the Colorado sports scene, and that's Matt Campbell. He's going to be with us. He is now the director of sports for the Charlotte Observer in the Carolinas. We're going to talk to him about what's it like being the director of sports for a media company when it's difficult to go cover events because there's no events. What do? Do you just make it up and guess, or do you just cover horse racing and dog racing and the occasional international soccer game and maybe, the WNBA down at the IMG arena, or the NBA in a modified season where the biggest story is about their meals come in plastic wrap, or the bed bugs that the WNBA is having to face down in Bradenton, Florida. It's the stories are still there. They're just different than what we've seen in the past. So we're going to talk to Matt and find out his opinion about how he's dealing as a manager and a director of a staff, a sports writing staff, what they say in their weekly staff meetings. I'm sure they would be comical if Matt were to record those, but hopefully he'll give us some insights about what that's all about. So, that being said, let me say goodbye to everybody out there in FaceTime land. We're live on Facebook. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day and enjoy being in the environments that we call Colorado. Have a great day today.